Hello all, and thank you for taking the time to join us here at A Lot to talk about phishing and what communication service providers can do about it. My name is Moshe Elias. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at A Lot. And before I start, I'd just like to cover some housekeeping issues. On your dashboard, you should have the main screen in the center, and on the left, a resource list of papers that I will probably be referring to or are related to the topic of this presentation. You have a Q&A box where you can enter questions. I will try and see them during the presentation, or I will answer them at the end if possible. You also have the opportunity or the facility, to contact us directly if you want to follow up on the topic of this presentation or any other related topic to what we do. And we would really, really appreciate if you could fill in the survey, tell us what you think about our webinars and what we can do to improve on them. So without further ado, I will proceed. So just to set the stage, phishing can have its own purpose, either to infect a device with malware, typically through a infected attachment or to a link that loads a drive-by onto a PC or a mobile phone. Sometimes it could be used to introduce ransomware, encrypt the files on the device and hold them for ransom, or install cryptojacking software and mine coins for the hacker. In most cases of large targeted hacks, what we found and what we've read in several surveys of other companies is that 90% of hacks starts with a phishing email. And if we take a look at some of the examples on this slide, you can see that Florida had to pay up $600,000 to hackers who encrypted their systems. It all started with an employee clicking on an email that resulted in introducing ransomware into the system. Or for the more consumer targets, here's a couple of examples from operators. It could be a notice of a large bill, Vodafone sending you a bill, or your company sends you a bill of 500 pounds or the equivalent in your coin, and then you're probably going to click on the attachment in order to understand what it's all about and try and dispute that if it's not normal. Many companies, including Verizon, as we see here, warn customers about phishing scams. We're going to talk about what can be done in addition to just posting notices on their website, but this is a good step in the right directions. So phishing could be used to introduce malware. It could be used to receive credentials in order to populate some kind of mailing list, or it could be used in order to have a more elaborate scam. Those are the two main reasons that people phish for information. So what is phishing? It's basically like a marketing campaign. We have our hacker on the left. He has a mailing list. He has a message that he wants to send out that he's crafted in some way, and we'll talk about that. And he needs the means to distribute his emails undetected as much as possible, and also won't incur too much cost from his pocket, because obviously he's doing this for some reason and he wants to make some money, and the cheaper the distribution system is, the more his profit margin will be. So as any marketer would know, we start with a mailing list. The better the mailing list, the better the results. So if I'm targeting the customers of a specific provider, then you want to have the email addresses of that specific provider so that your chances of success on how many emails you're sending is higher. What makes a good mailing list is the personal PII information, the personal identifiable information. So if there's a name attached to the email and we know that it's an Apple account and we're using the email that is being used on the Apple account, chances are that the phishing campaign will succeed better. The next step is the message itself. What hackers try and do is use as much information and also leverage basic human emotions, greed, fear, hope, in order to make the recipient act upon that specific email. The email, as I've said, it can contain a link or an attachment. I recently read that a new campaign was seen last week that included a QR code. As you know, many email systems provide the phishing protection, and so they scan emails for URLs. And so in order to hide the URL, they just insert it in a QR code in order to evade detection from the email security systems. So now our hacker has his mailing list, he has his message, and he wants to distribute the email. Email distribution costs money. Typically, the hacker would go to a third party in order to launch the emails if he doesn't set an SMTP server by himself, which also costs money. So let's say if, for an example, his email has an attachment of 100 kilobytes and he wants to send 1 million emails, that's 100 gigabytes of data that he wants to send, which means that it'll take time and it'll take money. Hackers can set up their own server, or they can rent a botnet that provides simple mail transfer services, and that means that many devices would be sending many devices or many members of the botnet. A botnet could be made of computers, phones, IoT devices. If many devices send a few emails, then there's a likelihood that they would evade detection. From stats that we've seen globally, about 280 billion emails are sent every day. 1% of them are phishing emails, which represents about 3 billion a day. Google, Hotmail, and Google, Microsoft, and other email services have implemented anti-phishing technologies or technologies to identify phishing emails. From stats that we've seen from different providers, it ranges between 1 in 100 to 1 in 1,000 emails will get through those filters, which translates to about 3 to 30 million emails evading detection from the email systems. And if about 1% will get clicked, that's a number that we've also seen. We're talking about 3,000 to 30,000 people falling victim daily, i.e. opening the email. In an enterprise, the statistics are a lot higher, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and why that's the case. So let's talk about different types of phishing. The first one, the one that we're most concerned about, is mass phishing, because that targets the mass market. Okay, so what I described in the previous example is more related to mass phishing as well. And you may ask, what's the difference between phishing and spam? Spam will typically try to make money off advertisers, so they'll either promote a product and then try and get someone to click on the advertiser's link in order to gain money from the advertising networks. Phishing is targeting the actual recipient of the email in order to steal credentials or infect his device. Now, in mass phishing, what many hackers try to do, I'm using the term hacker widely. I don't like to use the term phisher. They'll try to masquerade as either a famous brand or a trusted authority, and they'll craft their email in order to have a very clear call to action. And if you take a look on the right-hand side, you can see several brands that are used very widely in order to phish for either credentials or other purposes. Apple tops it with about 25%, Microsoft with about 17%, and Google with about 13%. Different surveys will show different stats, but we all understand that since those are the primary providers of services to the mass market, then obviously it makes sense for the phishers, the hackers, to try and use those brands and masquerade as them in order to hide their own identity. Some of the messages can be really creative. We see that invoices, bills, orders as attachments are widely used. They're also very effective in businesses for spear phishing. I'll talk about that in a moment. Some of them purport to be to care about the customer. We've detected suspicious activity. Your account is locked. Enter your details here. And some are a bit more aggressive. You're being sued or fined, or you get a notice from the IRS. Your tax return file is overdue. Click here in order to prevent being prosecuted. And of course, there are those that generate hope. You won the lottery, or someone reaches out and asks for your help to transfer a large sum of money, and you'll get a cut out of that. So in mass phishing, the hacker will try and leverage emotions in order to get an action out of the recipient. Of course, the probabilities, as I've mentioned before, is pretty low. 1 in 100 or 1,000 will get through the email filters, and about 1% will click. And so they really need to massify their campaign in order to reach a very broad audience. Second type of phishing is called spear phishing. This typically requires a higher investment on the side of the hacker. What they'll try and do is engineer a message that looks as trustworthy, as credible, as authentic as possible. They'll target a function within a company, a role, or a person. So if they're sending an invoice, it'll probably be to the finance department. If they're sending a CV it'll be sent to the recruitment department. And if they sell payroll information, well, I'm guessing most anyone within a company would want to see that. So there are different ways for them to craft the message. You've probably heard of the term email business compromise. What they'll do is impersonate someone, maybe someone of authority. In fact, I think within our own company, our VP of marketing got an email supposedly from the CEO asking her to buy several gift cards from Amazon and send the codes to him. Since she knows him well, she knows that is not necessarily something that he would do. She reported it and deleted the email immediately. Spear phishing does not only attack enterprises, okay? There are many scams, like the one where a hacker would compromise an individual's email account and then send to all his contacts an email saying that he's stranded abroad, his wallet has been stolen, his phone has been stolen, and he requests that you wire some money in order for him to be able to return home. An easy way to verify that is to call him or to contact some of the people you know that he knows and see if they received a similar email. Another target for this type of attack has become lawyers and also real estate agents. In fact, the FBI reported that they received a complaint where a person, a victim, initiated a fraudulent wire transfer to the tune of $56,000 after he received a spoofed email from a lending agent during a real estate transaction. So obviously the criminal here had the access to the real estate agent's emails. He knew that a transaction was about to happen. And he then sent, impersonating the agent, the lending agent, an email asking for the wire transfer Fortunately, this was caught in time, and the FBI, working with the victim's bank, was able to recover those funds. This is big business, and according to the FBI, criminals made off with about $680 million last year. So this is not something that we should take lightly. So some of my personal experience, this happened to me yesterday, I kid you not. I received an email from a person called Asaf. Attached was his CV. He has 9 years of experience in several areas. Our company is recruiting for a product manager, and it seemed fishy. First of all, the email didn't look right. It said Asaf something at cherry.news. This raised my suspicion immediately. Secondly, I'm not connected to him on LinkedIn. I don't know how he reached me. But since he provided his information at the bottom, his LinkedIn profile, his email, his Gmail account, and his mobile phone number, I decided to give him a call. Maybe someone knew that I was giving this phishing webinar and tried to see if I've eaten my own dog food. Anyway, I checked the number. It was the wrong number. I then went into the LinkedIn account and I found that he's a real person. Someone was impersonating Asaf in order to send this email to me. So it was a valid LinkedIn account. I contacted him through LinkedIn and explained to him the situation. And apparently some tool that was being used in order to match job openings with CVs of people was being used in order to generate these mass CV sends. So that was an interesting experience and very timely from this webinar's perspective. Phishing can also be categorized by delivery method. So we've talked a lot about email, and I've mentioned business email compromise or email account compromise for individuals. There's also a type of phishing that is pretty crafty, in my opinion, because it doesn't require any action from the side of the end user. What happened in Brazil to several banks is that the DNS of the home router was compromised. And instead of providing the IP address of a bank, it provided the IP address of a phishing website, a website that masqueraded as the bank. They were very sophisticated because what they did was when the person logged into the masquerading website, they proxied and opened a valid connection to the bank and showed the person his actual banking details and information. Of course, they kept his username password for future abuse. Phishing can be used by leaving a USB, an infected USB. This method became famous with Stuxnet. This relies on people's basic emotion of curiosity. Find a thumb drive, put it in your PC and see if there's anything interesting on there. There's also phishing, which is basically voice using the telephone in order to con people into giving information. And the last example is rising rapidly from 2017 and on. And this is called smishing, SMS phishing. And also, just by chance, I had the same experience yesterday. I got an SMS from one number. I read it in the beginning as wrong number. And I had just won $700,000. And all I had to do was send an email to the email that was in the SMS. Now, I've never been that lucky. Well, maybe once in high school, but I've never been that lucky to receive an unsolicited SMS providing me such a nice amount of money. And so I immediately checked online, and I found out, of course, that it is a hoax. And what the criminal wants you to do is to send an email to them, and then they will respond as the support organization and tell you to fill in a form that's attached. Of course, the attachment has some kind of malware installed in order for you to claim your prize. I've gone through some numbers during this presentation. I think the most interesting ones, if you are a service provider serving the mass market, is that 1 in 10 people reported that they lost about $5,000. That is a lot of money for any private person. And on average, about $476 lost per attack. So what can CSPs do to help? And I'm going to talk about stuff, not necessarily products or technologies, but stuff that I think would be recepted by the mass market in order to help them protect themselves against phishing attacks. The first thing that they can do is to educate in order to help people identify phishing better. They can use gaming programs, quizzes. There's a nice one on Google. They could use publicly available programs, or they can make their own. Language here would present a nice value add, because CSPs operate, of course, in a specific country, so localization would have a lot of value. They could also provide tips on how to check if an email received was indeed from the provider. I have copied here the window of my Facebook account. I received several emails from them asking why I haven't been on Facebook for a while. And of course, I went in to check on Facebook that indeed they were sent by them. So this is something that a lot of people don't know exists. Simple tools like that, even, of course, the service provider's own systems providing information if they've sent a bill or a notice or a notification. It would be nice if we could double check that email's validity by logging on to the actual website without touching the email, of course. And then if I see that the email was indeed sent by the provider, then I know that it's safe to open, safe to look, or safe to take action on. This, of course, could be extended. Many enterprises today are adopting phishing awareness programs where phishing emails or, a company would send emails that look like phishing emails to its employees and provide them feedback if they've clicked on them, or if they haven't clicked on them, or if they've reported them as phishing emails. This raises the awareness, because if I know that my company is sending out these emails, then of course if a phishing email does come in, I would double check and report it. So that's a program that I think that CSPs could offer their customers as a service in order for them to get more adept at recognizing phishing emails. Now, phishing goes on. It has its waves. Phishing attacks would increase around the holidays, during pop culture events. What we're showing here is a phishing website used to collect credit card details of users by posing as an official Game of Thrones merchandise store. Of course, this was just prior to the last season of Game of Thrones, and who doesn't like to buy merchandise online? A service provider providing local protection warnings could leverage security analytics to identify phishing campaign trends within the territory that he operates, partner with Internet crime prevention authorities to get the highlights of what's going on, and proactively alert customers for them to avoid getting caught in the latest schemes. Now again, the advantage of a service provider providing this type of service would be that it would be in a local language. It wouldn't be a global security company providing everything typically in English. It would be based on events in that country, holidays, political events, whatever, that could trigger or are known to trigger phishing campaigns. So with the educate and the warn, I think from seeing the results of enterprises adopting phishing awareness campaigns, this could also help the mass market be more proactive in protecting themselves against phishing attacks. Now, I'd like to take some of your time and ask you a question, since I do want to understand if you have an opinion. Most of you I've seen from the attendees list work in enterprises. Does your company have a phishing awareness campaign, and is it effective? I think that many best practices adopted by enterprises can also be as effective for the consumer market, for the mass market, especially for families, but even more so for small businesses. Small business would never think to deliver a phishing awareness campaign to the 10, 15, even 100 employees, because typically they don't have a security person full-time on the job. And why not provide this as a service? It could be a paid service if it's a business. And so I would really appreciate the audience's opinion if they do have a program in place, and do they think it's effective or not. So I'm going to give you a few more minutes to answer, and then we'll share the results immediately after this slide. Okay. Not too... All right, 53.8%, more than half, say yes. That's brilliant. And it's effective. 7.7 say it's not effective. And 30% say no, we should have one, which probably means that they think it would be effective. I thank you for the results. It's encouraging to see those types of results. Now, most enterprises do have technology in place in order to protect their employees from phishing. Financial loss can be quite significant, as we've seen in the Florida case. $600,000 is not change. Phishing can be stopped also by the service provider, in addition to the email service providers themselves. Typically, if a phishing goes out and requests access to a website, a URL, that HTTP request or HTTPS request, many phishers are now using encrypted websites in order to seem even more credible to the victim. So these requests can be analyzed in real time in order to evaluate if they are directed to a phishing website or not. And since this service would be centrally managed by the service provider, of course it would be relying on real-time quality threat intelligence feeds in order to make that determination if the website that the victim is headed for is indeed a malicious website, and stop him. The second advantage is that if they have a significant install base of people subscribed to that service, that creates a lot of security analytics, and the service provider can use that information to recognize new campaigns, to recognize perpetrators, and partner with law enforcement agencies to try and stop them, to provide that information through PR outlets in order to make the general public aware. And of course, this would have the side effect, the positive side effect, of them being seen as a company, as a provider who cares and who's doing something about it in order to protect their customers. This is the only slide talking about technology or product that we provide from here at Allot. And so I thank you for that minute. And there are companies who are using our service. Let's talk about an analogy. You're all familiar with the name Ralph Nader, who in the mid-60s wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed. He became a voice for the American consumer, an activist on car safety, okay? And even though car accidents take a heavy toll on life and the economy, people continue to use them. So I'm expecting people to continue using online services even if crime does go up or even if they are affected directly by online crime. People will use it because it's become a necessity. But cars have become safer through activism like Ralph's and through regulation from the different government agencies. Every country today has a set of regulations of the safety features that a car needs to have. But some companies took safety and they made it into a differentiator. I'm using the Volvo example, of course. And I really like their ad from the 70s, I believe. All cars have safety features, but Volvo put safety features on its safety features. You might be guessing I'm a bit of a petrol head and I like cars. But I think this analogy could work also for CSPs who don't wait for the regulators to step in, who don't wait for opinion to push them and press them into providing a solution, but take it on as a differentiator, and we'll talk about the opportunities that that can provide. Another example could be the water companies that we use, all the filtering mechanisms and technologies that they use to make sure that we have potable water is another example that comes to mind. And some CSPs are doing that. Okay, here's two examples of CSPs. Telefonica has put security high on their brand awareness. They are, in addition to providing services, they're also providing the soft services that I mentioned before, quizzes, educational purposes that help their customers be safer from phishing. And Vodafone with SecureNet, which we're proud to be a supplier of, who also provide anti-phishing capabilities in addition to other security mechanisms. Here are some of the examples. They're different. Vodafone has made this into a lucrative business at €1, about €1 per subscriber, or providing it for free in high-quality customers or high-revenue customers. And their CEO was quoted as saying that it's already made €160 million in revenue for them. And, of course, Telefonica providing services for security services to the mass market, which includes both consumer and small businesses. So these are tangible results of taking a step in the right direction. For the economy, I think that providing a safer online security solution will increase online adoption. Okay, surveys again that we've done ourselves and also validated with third parties and third-party surveys. People, for instance, don't use mobile payments as much as they could. 42% of those who don't use them claim that security is the main reason. Smart home adoption, also in the interest of service providers because they are providers of smart home technology, and also the connectivity services that go along with that, and some professional services that can also go with that. So 51% cite privacy and security as the main barrier to smart home adoption. And based on our own surveys and actual examples, people are willing to pay for network-based mobile security. And in one of the pieces of collateral that we're providing you during this webinar, we also did a survey for looking at the connected home. And what we found out is that people are willing to pay around $5 if they have between 1 and 10 devices, so 66% of households. And what is not surprising is that with more devices, there's a higher level of concern. So 84% of households are willing to pay on average around $6 per month in order to cyber secure their home. So in summary, unfortunately, phishing is here to stay. It relies on a constant, and that's human behavior. Con artists have been around since the biblical times, and they will continue to try and con people in either giving them information or getting financial benefit from them. CSPs who take the lead from this and provide a service can get tangible returns and, of course, brand preference or brand differentiation. And it shouldn't be just about technology. It shouldn't be just about providing anti-phishing technology. As I've mentioned before, and as you've provided in the poll, many enterprises combine technology together with awareness programs and warnings in order to elevate an individual's careful checking of an email in order to make sure that it's indeed credible. The best thing you can do is try and go through a different path, contact that person and make sure, or organization, and make sure that it indeed came from them and that the request is indeed what they need. So a three-pronged approach: educate people, warn them about specific events happening in your specific region, combined with technology, I think can help reduce the effectiveness and the impact of these phishing attacks. We've provided quite a bit of information in the resources link that you can find on the left. So I encourage you to take a look, and also if this is an interesting topic, on the right-hand side you can contact me directly if you want to follow up on anything related to this topic or any topic. I am pretty passionate about the need to better protect the mass market online. And again, we would really appreciate if you could fill in the survey and give us your feedback on this event. I know that unintentionally we cut it down. I was hoping to finish around 30 minutes. I hope that this was interesting for you, and I hope to both hear from you and see you in our future webinars. I do see a couple of questions here, so I'll take the time to answer them. In your experience, has been the perception regarding offers new to the customers versus taking responsibility? Okay, so the question of liability of providing a security service, I think that's the gist of a question from Miguel in Chile. This is always an area that if you take a look at any security company, okay, they will never say, well, maybe we'll try during the sales process to tell you that their solution is perfect, but no security solution is perfect. I think that this has become a known. I think that everyone accepts the fact that if you are targeted, even if you are a big bank or a federal institution or a company that does security, there are chances that if your adversary is persistent, has enough resources, he will be able to attack you. And so I don't think that full liability for a security service is an issue. At least from our existing companies, I have never seen that stop them providing a security service. Let me take a look. Okay. A second question, also by Miguel. In the minds of some operators, it is thought by offering these security services to customers, they feel that they are telling the market that their network is not secure. Have you experiences of this kind? No. It's not that they're saying that the network is not secure. The network is open. So the network connects you to the internet, to the good and to the bad of it. That is the positioning. That is what is communicated, and that is, I think, a well-known fact. What service providers are doing when promoting security services is saying, Okay, we know that there's some bad stuff out there. We will provide you services that will increase the protection that we can provide you. Miguel, thank you for your questions. Let me see. As a service provider, we visit several enterprise clients. Most haven't claimed they have been effective. Yep. I'm assuming, Phil, that you're talking about the poll survey. I really appreciate your answer. It just validates the responses I got from the poll. That finishes our questions. That finishes our time. I really thank you all for attending this webinar, and I hope to hear from you in the future. Bye-bye.